Welcome back to Blockchain Pill. My name is Alex, and today we talk to Wyatt from ICP, the company that developed Kinic, the first Web3 search engine, which is hosted entirely on the Internet Computer Protocol. Kinic is also a DAO, so we'll also talk about that. We'll learn about what they are working on right now and what are the future plans of Kinic. Before we start and we go into Kinic, I would love to get to know more about you. What is your background, and what did you work on before working on Kinic?
Yeah, I am a technical co-founder / technical founder. I've run many different projects. I've worked for private equity and before that for venture capital directly. I made a few of my own companies as well. Before I was working on ICP, I was actually doing a skeuomorphic office space. So it's a virtual office space. I started in 2019 where you can actually click on chairs in the office space and have meetings with people near to you. At the time, there wasn't really a high demand for that. People were like, why would you need like an office space where you can meet online? But then Corona happened and it became super popular in Japan very quickly. All of the major universities in Japan signed up for it. In summer 2021, I sold it to a Swedish gamification company, and I think they're now kind of making it like a DeFi metaverse type of thing for business. But after that, I jumped back into Web3, and it was right during when the IC was launching. I came back to Web3. I'm like, hey, here's this new thing called the IC, and dive pretty heavily into that. And me as a technical person, like even having all this technical know-how, getting up to speed with what was happening was pretty challenging. I just imagine salespeople, marketers, etc., trying to use the IC or use other Web3 software, and it being basically impossible for them to start. So ICP really started as this low-code / no-code infrastructure suite. It was a low-code builder. We built it, and then they crashed, like the IC crash and all Web3 crash kind of happened at the same time. And there was not very much demand for like a website builder for the IC. There was maybe 3 to 5 users using it often, and that's not enough to support a company in general. But what we did have, though, which is pretty cool, was demand for something called zero-knowledge proofs, which is a form of cryptography that allows you to prove things that happen off-chain, on-chain. So you can do computation on your local computer and kind of prove the fact that you ran those correctly on-chain. But there's a lot of demand for that, so we pivoted ICP directly to kind of build this general purpose zero-knowledge virtual machine. But anyway, from that work is kind of where I jumped into Kinic. We had demand from ICP for these website builders who are building on-chain who wanted SEO. And at the time, there was no SEO solution for the IC at all. So really from that demand, like, hey, a famous blogger came to the IC, they're using our stuff, but no one's finding it. Like there's no Google, no Google SEO, like no one can find the stuff, even if they came here and tried to make their content. And Kinic was really started off that idea, like how do we help these people get discovered? How do we get these dApps discovered? And during the hackathon that summer, I think the summer actually 2023 is when I first pushed it out live and kind of did the entire initial build. But from there, it's been actually it was summer 2022. I might be messing up the dates by a year or so. But yeah, anyway, it's from there is really where it was used a lot. Like the very beginning, it was insane how much usage there was. It was 10,000 users, unique users per day coming in. It had a huge peak running up to the hackathon and kind of went down afterwards, which is fine. But then it kind of bounced around from there, like with usage and searches and queries. But really from that initial drive is where the SNS idea came from. Is if we can build this out directly as a DAO, it can be community driven. So people who want certain features who are asking us all the time, they would actually get support to do that. At the time, it was just me kind of running it, but now it has completely become a DAO. So there's actually a team of people who do certain tasks, and anyone in the world right now can actually propose on the SNS, say, hey, we want to see this feature. Hey, we want XYZ. And there are people there willing to kind of develop that out for you.
You mentioned that you started working on Kinic because bloggers would not be able to have SEO on the Internet Computer Protocol. And I was talking to Nick from Nuance, and he actually has this problem where it's very hard to do marketing because they cannot get people to find them organically. So is Kinic solving this SEO problem for Nuance and other people that want to blog on the Internet Computer?
The IC actually added SEO support later on. So there's direct support for SEO now. So those things eventually end up getting pushed up in Google results. What I think it helps with now is the fact that if you're a Web3 user, you can find this stuff very quickly. So if you're looking for 100% Web3 content, it's easier to find it through a Web3 search engine. And the other thing we're doing, and we spoke with Nuance in the past as well, is we're actually building an AI that's going to allow people to kind of index their own content that's on the IC, and then users can easily search for relevant information. So that's kind of where we're going. We think the old school version of search, where you like type something in, you see a bunch of paid ads at the very top, and then at the bottom you might find something relevant, is going to die. And most of the search in the future is going to be AI based. If you're looking for a question, you're going to find it by asking directly and having assistants to kind of find what you really want, rather than just ad based advertising. So that's the direction we're going with Kinic. So yes, it's very much going to help with Nuance's issue, and also Discover. Discover app has the same thing, where there's a bunch of content, but it's hard to find it. Same with OC, Open Chat. It'd be very cool, even for our own Open Chat, to have a way to search and find things extremely easily, and have kind of a back and forth with an AI to get that information out of it. So that's kind of where we're focused now in terms of the DAO. Like, how do we get this ZK portion with this AI portion to run efficiently on chain? But we can speak about that a little bit later, I guess.
Absolutely. And you mentioned when you first saw the Internet Computer Protocol, I'm curious to find out your opinion, like what you thought on it when, as a developer, when you first saw it. Is it so much more advanced than anything else out there? Like, what's your honest opinion on the Internet Computer Protocol?
Front ends on chain, I think, was extremely cool. It still is extremely cool. I think it's the only one that actually does it. So there's a bunch of attempts to kind of get full dApps on chain, and I think the IC is the only one that actually does it. So what you have to do now, or you had to do previously, was kind of like link different chains and different components together. And most people were just too lazy and don't want to do that. Also, there might not be enough risk to reward for them to do it. So what ends up happening is you have the back end on chain and the front end off chain somewhere in AWS or a server, a cloud server. And for full stack dApps that need the full thing to be on chain and to be trustable, I think it's the only way to do it currently without having to like hack something together yourself.
What are the benefits of being able to host everything on chain? Like, why do we want to go in this direction where everything is hosted on chain?
Manipulation. I think SEO is a good example of this in general. Right now, Google can change, or whatever search engine, it doesn't have to be Google. Anyone who runs SEO now can change it at their will whenever they want. They can actually push things down or push them up. So it's really about information freedom. You can imagine a dirty actor during a voting election or something like that. It's like, oh, we're just going to push it down because they didn't pay us money. Like, it's something I think happens and it gets not noticed because it's just business as usual. So what you need for something like SEO, something that involves information freedom, is the 100% guarantee that's running the way it's supposed to run. That's why Kinic is open source. You can check the code. You can see what's on chain, and you can see what the front end also running on chain. So it's things like that. They're high value items that need to be verified, are really what I would recommend. So DeFi is another example. You would want all of your DeFi stuff to be 100% on chain because it involves tons of money in some cases. Information freedom. AI is another one that we can get into, but in general use cases for AI, you don't want it to be off chain, hallucinating things. You want it to be verified. It's something I always think is interesting about people using AI now. Like, you're using this front end and you're typing in whatever and you're paying money to use it, but it could just be a guy like in a room somewhere typing responses back. Like, you don't know. It could be complete lies. It could be whatever. I think that's where verifiable computation really does come into play, and it's pretty significant, not just for like individual people, but also for society in general. So like voting, elections, things like that are also very high priority items.
For example, on Kinic, you would not be able to do that, or it would be visible if anybody tried to tamper with...
Actually, we could not. We'd have to have a vote, and then you'd have to verify the code. So the DAO would have to vote on the changes, and it would be pretty bad for them to vote on something that was not good for the users.
Outside of the crypto space, people are not very familiar with the terms like DAO and Web3. How would you describe those two in, as easy terms as possible for the normal viewer?
Yeah, a DAO, in the most simple terms, is a decentralized organization. So it's just like a regular organization, but the decision makers might be varied and across different locations and places. So anyone who's participating in this project is a DAO member, in my opinion. So it could just be a random coder. It can be a person who has an opinion of what we should do next. Anyone who also happens to own a token has the right to vote in the DAO. So it's a very much democratic way to run projects in general. And not everything should be a DAO. There's some companies and some projects I don't think should be a DAO, but for things that involve like basic rights, like SEO and things like that, where there's many different opinions of what should be done, it becomes a consensus type model. So it works much like a democracy in a way. You all have one vote, one way to vote to see your country or whatever change. It kind of works in the same way as that.
And Web3, which is a very used like buzzword in the crypto space. So Web3 means exactly what?
Ownership is what a lot of people say. I think Dominic Williams is actually the first person I heard it from was ownership. And I think it summarizes it quite well. There's a whole talk about it in general, but Web 1 was just about reading things online. Web 2 was about interacting social. And then Web 3 is about ownership. And I think that's still very true today. It's about owning the projects you're using and having a say in what happens with them.
I agree. And I think it's very interesting to see because in the past years, we've seen a lot of like the cancel culture, start to ramp up. Like you say one wrong thing or not even a wrong thing, but you say something that pisses off, a very vocal few people. And all of a sudden you are canceled. Your social media accounts are canceled. You have no followers and, you're gone. And with Web3, if you say that it means that it means that you would own your followers and you can take them somewhere else. Is that how it would work?
Yeah. We actually tried or experimented with something called Decentralized Follower Network. And there's actually a open source code somewhere about it. But I think that's 100%. Like if you had a canister or if you had a smart contract that helped you kind of do the hard technical stuff behind it, that's exactly how it would work. You could leave the platform and bring your followers with you to whatever platform you wanted. So say you're on YouTube and you want to move somewhere else, you can do that. And it's really the followers as well. Like they get direct access to the person they want access to. They don't have to go through the middleman. And that's a lot of what Web3 is doing. It's destroying like these middleman type routes. So I think it's definitely very cool.
It totally is. And it gives the power back to the people. But are we going to be able to take the power back? Like are those big, like giant companies allow us to, to take our power back? Like, what do you think?
I think it's us in the Web3 community ourselves. There's always a kind of a balancing act between making these projects and the greed that might appear behind them. So there's always bad actors, no matter what the industry is. And really at the very beginning of crypto, because it was all very price focused, like what's the token going to do? What's the token going to do? There was a lot of bad actors that did come in. I think a lot of Web3 is actually cleaned up since the last couple of years, and there's people focused purely on the tech and purely on like building great projects. So I would say like buyer beware for sure. Like be cautious of what you're using. Verify the code. If you can't verify yourself, find someone who has verified it. And especially with any of these SNS DAOs, particularly like if it's not open source, don't trust it. Like make sure you have a lot of verification there. And after the fact, then you could be a little bit more it could be a little bit more trustworthy and trust everything that's in code. Like it's harder to change code than just to kind of blindly trust what someone is saying.
Is crypto now similar to how online companies were in the 2000s? Like would people create like all kind of companies that people would buy like anything, no matter what they were doing? So was it similar?
That was more of the token run in like 2017. It was really ridiculous. My story of crypto is kind of strange. I first was introduced to crypto in general when Satoshi was still on the forums. My brother was actually mining Bitcoin for something called Silk Road to do like buy drugs and stuff like that when he was a kid. It's not relevant now. So it was very shady. Like, oh, Web3 is shady. I don't want to have anything to do with it at the very beginning. But it was cool. He was asking me the other day, I'm like, what were you guys doing about privacy back then? Like, how would you like make sure your transactions are private? It's like, oh, you just mint new Bitcoins. Like you just mint them and use the new ones. That's what everyone's doing for privacy. But from there, like I was always interested in always kind of looking into it as a potential technology. And then 2017 happened, and it's when really like the whole token buying frenzy, in my opinion, started happening. So any new project that had like even a slight slimmer of hope was completely funded. It was just complete madness.
Yeah, that is so true. And I also felt this in the previous bull market in 2021. I think it was very, very similar. So I can only imagine how it was in 2017. Everything was crazy.
Yeah, you know what's cool about that? Dude, my brother, who was the guy who introduced me to Bitcoin, was actually into NFTs first. And he kept trying to convince me. He's like, hey, you should make a marketplace for NFTs. I'm like, that's stupid. I don't want like an image connected to a blockchain. Like it makes no sense to me. And he ended up being very right about that as well.
The next time he tells you about something, make sure you send me a message. Maybe that's going to be the next big thing.
The oracle. Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, for sure. What is the difference between Kinic and a regular Web2 search engine? What's different?
Yeah, the entire search algorithm is hosted on chain. You can verify it through the open source code. There is nothing that is in the algorithm that we can like tweak or manipulate the way we want. So basically everything is just on chain. and that's how you get the verification that it's running correctly.
When you search something on Kinic, do you only find Web3 stuff, or do you find anything from the internet?
Yeah, currently we're only doing IC, and there's I have my own opinion, but there's various opinions why we're only doing the IC. We could easily do other chains if we want to, but what I see right now is there's kind of a race to the bottom of just like adding other chains in, like blindly adding in whatever chain might have a front end, etc. I think is kind of silly. It's not really worth it. It kind of defeats the purpose. I know you can add like Ethereum projects on there, but Ethereum projects are mostly hosted off chain. We really kind of want to incentivize them to be hosted on chain rather than hosted off chain. And really, in my opinion, it's not going to be the way it is now in a year or so. The search that we have now is MVP. It shows you, yes, these algorithms exist and they do this thing. And you can search through the IC projects easily and find kind of the relevant stuff. But in a year or so, what you're going to be able to do is actually have a more AI powered, kind of hyper powered search that is going to make the one we have now just look silly, frankly speaking. Yeah.
Do you have any information about how it is going to work? Like what's going to make it different than the one right now?
Yeah. The first thing that's going to help with projects on the IC is actually aggregate their own data that's internally hosted. So you might have heard recently that on the Definity docs, they have a company, I forget the name of the company now, like hosting the docs, and people can search through the docs to find relevant information for developers. So that can actually now be hosted completely on chain because we have models that run on chain very quickly. And we also just finished a vectorized database, which is a database for AI that has queries under 1 second. So you can now actually host the data on chain and also host the AI, either the LLM, either on chain or locally on your computer. So that's something that you're going to be able to do pretty easily. And that's one other thing, like if you trust this Web2 company that might be messing with the data, or you're going to have it as your own canister where you can control it and kind of change the data the way you want to.
Having AI on the ICP blockchain, is it more efficient, or is it like the benefit is only the fact that you can trust it more than one hosted on Web2?
I think this actually gets to the root of kind of why we're doing it. Let's say it's like not just Web3 front end data. Let's say it's medical data. An example given is like there's a patient who comes in who's 80 years old, and doctors have to go through each year to see kind of what their issue is, what was done before, kind of aggregate the data and make a summary. If that data was done by a cloud-based AI, you have to give them all the private data for one, and for two, you have to trust that it was done correctly. That did they do the training correctly? And the last thing is like, are the answers relevant, or is the AI just hallucinating? You can actually remove most of that stuff if you just have it hosted and verified on chain. You can have private inputs if the inputs are hosted locally or backed by, once again, connecting ICP back to Kinic is the zero knowledge proofs. So there's very good benefits, especially for valuable data like that, to have it hosted kind of privately in its own canister.
Benefits which would outweigh any like increased costs or anything. I assume if it's like medical stuff, you need to make sure those are 100% correct.
Yeah, you have to be make it as correct as possible, and also as verified as possible. You don't want any manipulation. You don't want anything like accidentally breaking. So that like high value stuff should be, in my opinion, on a blockchain, and also verified, done through verifiable computation in some way.
This actually makes me very happy because when people hear that, hey, come to ICP because we can host stuff online. Most people don't care, like I don't care that it's hosted on the blockchain. But if we're presenting it like, here are the benefits of having stuff actually on the blockchain, like you get this, like this should be the selling point on the Internet Computer Protocol, not just we can host pictures on the blockchain, which is also cool because you saw Elon Musk saying that NFTs are not even real pictures. You only have the link to a picture hosted on Amazon Web Services, which was quite funny.
Yeah, if I was going to make like a little list of what it would be useful for, generally speaking, this field is called zero knowledge machine learning, so it's ZKML, and it's useful for 3 different things. One is private inputs. So if you go to ChatGPT or AI now, you type something in, it steals your data basically. So a lot of people are getting in trouble for this. They'll have company information they accidentally put in, and then OpenAI now has that secret company information. So you can have private inputs like that. Medical data is another private input. You can have private models. So say you're a trader and you made your own AI model that's just amazing. Like it's the best thing in the world. It trades very, very efficiently. You want to sell that model with slight tweaks, where you can actually do that now and keep the model private, so you don't ruin your private work that you did there. Or you can have weights, private weights. Models training is very expensive. It's a thing that takes GPU or a lot of GPU. And that normally it's like a big ticket item, like $3 to $5 million to get really good models trained. That if you have private weights, you don't have to expose your weights anymore. So it's really just those three things that benefit from being on chain and also being verified.
When you said you have private weights, I didn't understand. What is that?
A weight is what is used with the model for inference. So you have a bunch of data and you train your model, and what the result of the training is a weight. And with these weights is how you get the results from the model.
With the model hosted on the blockchain, you can train it with whatever you want, all the information, and then you can sell the services that this bot offers without people being able to steal like the bot per se,
The bot itself,
right?
yeah, exactly. You can also have private inputs too. So like there's
Super cool.
very cool stuff. And I think the IC is actually a really good place to host all this. There's actually proposals to have it like hosted on Ethereum or other things, or just hosted proofs on it. I don't think it's really realistic. There's people trying, but the IC has the compute power to actually do a lot of the stuff right now.
I remember I saw a graph. So to be able to host 1 gigabyte of data on the Internet Computer Protocol, it's like it costs like $5, and then on Ethereum it's like tens of millions of dollars. So people won't even try. Let's go back to Kinic. What are you guys working on right now? What are some features that people can expect in the near future for Kinic?
We're building the kind of underlying tech to make what I've been mentioning possible. The thing we did last week is actually, or we're still kind of doing midway, is the vector database. To make this stuff run with AI, you need to have it in a special format, and it's called a vectorized format. We have indexers now that kind of index the IIC and it's old school. The old school way of doing it, like gets the top keywords and meta tags and things like that. But what we have currently, or what's under build right now, is actually a vectorized version of that, where we can have the entire IC kind of this AI readable format. So you can ask questions directly from these sites. As a demo, I believe we're going to have or what some of the developers are planning to have from the Kinic DAO is actually have the database from the IC internal websites. So people can just scan that like they do now for whatever service they're using, but they're planning on making a kind of sample app where you can actually scan the IC's internal documents 100% on chain. So just as a sample of like what's possible, that's probably what we're going to release first. And the token itself, like the Kinic token, it's going to be based around these model where people can train these AIs and do things with them, and they pay tokens for kind of that usage.
There is a problem with ICP tokens right now. Most of them really don't have a lot of liquidity. And is there a reason why nobody listed their token on any centralized exchanges? Like, do you have any idea why?
That is the goal of a lot of projects. That's, I think, the near-term goal for Kinic as well, or at least within the year. The thing is, they have to get you have to become very widely used, and then you have to start those conversations. Also, I think because of the way the IC works, like we're not an Ethereum token. Like we're not just an ERC20 token that anyone can spin up and understand. There needs to be a little bit of interaction there. I think Definity is actually already on top of that, where we talk to these centralized exchanges and explain this is this token standard, this is what we use, and this is how you kind of set it up for exchange. So the reason why you don't see as much liquidity, once again, is there's no really direct link between where the liquidity is, which is like Ethereum and those places, into the IC community. But if you do start seeing more direct connections, you'll probably see more liquidity flow in. And there's a bunch of reasons for that. I'm not a trader of tokens, but you can imagine like arbitrage and things like that just being a source of liquidity.
I think once we'll have like the first few tokens getting listed on exchanges, then we're going to see like an acceleration in other tokens get listed as well. And then all of a sudden people will look at those graphs and be like, man, I wish I found about these projects, 1 year or 1.5 years ago. But how are you planning to attract new users to Kinic?
Yeah, I think we're a little bit different than a lot of the other people in the space. We could go like Web3 to Web3 to Web3, like L1s or L2s, and kind of add them to our chain. But I think that's, once again, a race to the bottom. There's like a bunch of people already kind of doing the same thing. It's kind of silly to have off-chain stuff hosted on like an on-chain only search engine. So really, like Web2 users is really where like we want to go. These users should not even know they're using a Web3 project. they should go here and say, hey, this is this AI or this is this search model. I type in a question and it gives me the answers that I want from these data sources. And that's the thing, it's personal. Like you can have your own data sources, your own canisters or smart contracts, like for whatever you want. And you can move those and change those the way you want to. So that's kind of where we're going, is more Web 2 focused. And we think there's this gigantic space that's Web 2 and this little like dot that's Web 3. If you kind of target the Web 3 space, it's a little bit silly because it's still too small of a net to make any real impact.
So you would allow people to search stuff from Web 2 on Kinic with the assistance of the Kinic AI?
Yeah, and they can actually run their own models if they want to. So if you're a doctor and you have a patient, you can have your own model. Or if you're a trader from a different blockchain, you can create your own model. They would press go, and it would spin this stuff up on the IC by itself. It would have no like involvement from them whatsoever, which kind of gets back to like the no code, low code mentality. But yes, they should not even know that they're using Web3.
I'm curious, in the future, will we be able to have like an AI super doctor that you could go to a website and ask him, hey, this is how I'm feeling, and he tells you like precisely what you have better than what a doctor could?
No. It's more of a tool for, say you are a doctor and you want to summarize that 80-year-old patient data. That's what it's more targeted at. You're the professional, you want something to help you. That other model is a little bit dangerous because you're not the professional. But for developers as well, like a developer coming to the IC as a new person, it's very hard to find documentation. And one thing I think is interesting about this is like, they paid whatever the AI is, like $1,000 a month for this service. But really where like a lot of the good data is actually on their Discord and other places that I don't think they're indexing. So like we can do stuff like that, find little tricks where we actually get the good data, and then running it on the AI on the IC, they can control it themselves. Again, more data sources if they want to, they can tweak it a little bit. And that's really where a lot of the freedom of this comes from.
This week or last week, I think it was like the news broke that Discover, which is another popular ICP DApp, started marketing to Solana, and people were super upset that happened. They said that that Discover is quitting the Internet Computer and is moving to Solana, which is not. They aren't leaving ICP. Like everything is still hosted on the Internet Computer Protocol. So, what do you think about them, kind of like branching out to Solana and not only be inside the ICP community?
You cannot only be in one community. And this is like a fact of business. Most of these companies or the early projects were backed by venture capital, and there is normally a like target frame for when you need to hit certain milestones. So like SNS projects, we have a little bit more freedom. So Kinic DAO can do DAO things and kind of move at its own pace and hit its own targets that the DAO decides. With a VC-backed project, you have to hit those targets, and it doesn't matter how you get there. Like you can add Solana, you can add ICP, you can add whatever, as long as you hit the targets for the users. So it's a different mindset. Like how the projects run. A DAO is something completely different, has different priorities. And if you're a company, obviously like making profit as fast as possible is going to be the priority.
That sparked the question in my mind. And it's good to have you here to be able to ask this question. Is the Internet Computer Protocol an infrastructure layer, and people from all over the blockchain who want to have stuff hosted on chain should come and host everything on the Internet Computer Protocol and then go back to their chains and do their stuff, and without even mentioning the Internet Computer? And they, if we have like 1,000 strong apps on the Internet Computer Protocol, that's going to burn cycles like crazy. And, we don't even need people to know that they are hosted on the Internet Computer Protocol. So is this what ICP is supposed to do?
My opinion has always been, I think, a little bit contrary to the popular, the way people have been talking about it. You have developers coming to the IC. They make new stuff. And if there's not demand, they have to go do something else for work. So really like feeding the developers is extremely important. The way most people, companies, projects, etc., do this, like AWS is a good example. When AWS was coming to Japan, they would have like free seminars, and they would get companies signed up. Say, hey, you guys, I'll train your engineers, and now you can they can use this stuff. We'll kind of support you getting set up. And the companies were paying the developers who are interested in the tech. Right now, we have none of that. Like at the top, we just have people who are maybe solopreneurs coming in with no funding or very little funding, getting grants, etc., to kind of push these projects forward. The SNS was very good for that, right? So you have these projects that are super dedicated that finally like grow up and now have enough funding to do what they really need to do. But the other way around, like getting companies to pay the developers is extremely important, in my opinion. I think we're just starting to see that a little bit more. The vet key for privacy on the IC was recently released, which allows companies to host data on chain that's private. Is extremely important. Like we didn't have that at the very beginning. So even if we're speaking to companies, it's like, is this data private? Sorry, no. That like ends the conversation for most Web2 companies. But now that we do have a little bit of privacy on the IC, I think we can actually restart a lot of these conversations. Another thing I think we can do is we do have really cool projects like Dragons, is actually kind of go after Web2 gaming companies or Web3 gaming companies that want to do this type of gaming but might not have the expertise. So yeah, those are a few things I would do if I was kind of running the sales or marketing teams. But I know there's might be a lot of thought and more opinion behind, or more thought behind of what I'm just saying.
So people shouldn't be upset when a project on the Internet Computer Protocol is doing something. I don't think there is a reason that anybody would leave us. ICP for the past 1.5 years, like people like would nonstop FUD it and FUD and say that ICP is this scam project and it's a rug pull. And we've heard this like so many times. And I think people like you who are actually very, very knowledgeable of the Internet Computer Protocol, like should start educating people. Is it a revolutionary technology? Does it do something that nobody else does? Is it truly the third biggest innovation after Bitcoin and Ethereum?
Wow, this is like a lot. It's gonna be very opinionated. There's so many issues with like, I don't know, saying which one's the best. I think it automatically starts like the tribal mentality. Like if you said ours is the best blockchain, people just like immediately want to fight when you say that. Like, no, it's not. That's impossible. Like you're over promising things. But from like a purely technical respect, like let's just talk about zero knowledge proofs. Currently, these are very popular. They're used in roll-ups and a bunch of different things. If you want to use zero knowledge proofs, there's only one way to actually kind of host them on chain right now. That's through something called Groth 16. So you can have these really fast, like cool proving systems, but in the end of the day, like you're narrowed to using it on one thing. But in reality, like if people accepted the facts, you can actually host very complicated verifiers and proofs directly on chain today on the IC. So those, like if you want to go from a pure technical argument, like there's things you can do right now that most people think are just impossible. And that's what I think is very cool about the IC.
With that in mind, I would love to hear your ICP price prediction for, let's say, 2025, expecting if it's going to be an explosive bull market. Where do you think we can see the Internet Computer in 2025?
Oh man, I'm like the worst person to ask about price prediction. My brother would be the person to ask for sure.
You can send him a text. Send him a text.
I'll send him a text. And ask a friend.
If you want to be more conservative, you can. Like don't feel pressed.
Yeah. I think the people who have most of the IC right now, or holding a lot of IC, are locked in for a very long time. I think there are a lot of very dedicated people in the central team, or I would say central people who have IC. And I think there's also the traders who obviously like their thing is to make money and flip it. So there's a bunch of mixed incentives. And I think something people don't really recognize about all coins and all projects is there's an invisible third man called the market. And he pushes the levers whatever he wants to. The big crash, I point to the market as the invisible hand doing that. It's just something in the market that either says yes or no, and it's based on various factors that have nothing to do with tech, nothing to do with popularity. They push the market in the direction that it wants to get pushed. My opinion is that IC is going to obviously increase much more than it is right now. The way, in my opinion, it normally happens is you start at the bottom and you build your way up in market cap. That's how most projects happen. For the IC, because of whatever reasons, it started at the very top and kind of was pushed down. So it was the reverse of most projects. But now we're down here again, and we can actually start moving back up. And that's when you see people gaining interest again, who are traders and whatnot. Now they see the price appreciating and say, hey, something's going on here. And they reinvestigate what it is and what it's good for and what people are using it. And that's where the train kind of gets started. So we were on a reverse engine for a little bit, and now it's going to probably flip back over. Much more than it is now for sure.
Yeah, I agree. Do you think it's going to be like in the, let's say, triple digits?
I think that's that would be very, very good. Definitely.
I don't know if you know the content producer on the Internet Computer Protocol. His name is Jerry Banfield, and he did a price prediction, and I think it was around $400 or $500 or even $600, like maybe a week, like at the craziest of times in the bull market, we're gonna see like this crazy valuation.
Yeah, that market cap is pretty ridiculous, though, right? Like you're constrained by the biggest market cap, which is Bitcoin. So you can actually kind of like look at the market caps to kind of make assumptions based on that. But what the IC really needs, obviously, is like burning. Like we need to start burning more tokens as doing whatever it might be. And that's where I think projects like Hot or Not and things that are just like high burners are just super beneficial to have in the ecosystem because they do help with that end goal.
Is there anything that we didn't cover in today's podcast that you wanted to talk about?
Yeah, just contributions to the Kinic DAO. This is something I think all projects that are SNS'd on the IC need to do a little bit better at kind of talking about and promoting. These are now SNS DAOs, which means people in the community actually actively contribute and get grants and rewards for that contribution. So if there's ideas, etc., you can actually go on to open chat and join a lot of these communities and kind of get involved if you want to. So it's not passive. You should be more active if you're interested, and definitely in price appreciation at all. There's not going to be things done, great things done with a few people in charge. It's going to take a lot of hands kind of doing different things. So if you want to participate in Kinic or any other DAO that has SNS, I would definitely recommend getting involved in some way.
So pretty much all the SNS projects are open source, and anybody, any coder, any developer can come up with an idea and propose it in the DAO, make a proposal, and obtain funds to actually do it.
Directly, yeah, that's exactly the truth. And most of the stuff that we're doing with AI right now is actually there's a few people in Japan that are very passionate about AI and passionate about doing development, and they were unable to get funding for that from Web2. So they found us as a DAO, and like, oh, this is awesome. This is exactly what I do. AI in constrained environments, so browsers and blockchains. So really, like, it opens the doors to a lot of different collaborations for sure.
We'll have all the links in the description below. And yeah, thank you for tuning in. It's been a pleasure talking to you. Thank you for taking time out of your day and making it to the podcast, and for educating us here at Blockchain Pill.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for having me.
I hope you enjoyed this discussion with Wyatt. If you did, don't forget to like this video and share it with a friend. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.